A lot of the people that I talk with, and it stemmed from my own personal experiences as well, we have gone through a season of survival where we have some type of unwilling challenge or obstacle that comes into our life. And instead of having a growth mindset and feeling like we can progress in life, it's more so a feeling of just trying to get through the day, trying to get through the week, trying to get through the month.
Mm.
But from my own personal experiences and a lot of the people that I talk with, we reflect back on that season of survival as the thing that really sets us up to thrive in life and the thing that is the launching pad for us to reach new heights. And I'm using survival here in metaphorical terms. You have come face to face with survival in its purest form. How do you think that 3 weeks of surviving in uncharted territories of the Amazon jungle ultimately set you up for a life where you could thrive?
That's a very, very good beginning of this conversation. It brings depth to it because I think that's the essence, really, even the essence of life. And I think it's survival is not just an analogy. Survival is the real essence of life. In the end of the day, when the challenge comes, we immediately realize that the most precious thing that we have is just the next breath. We want to live beyond everything else. And if the situation materializes, we'll give up everything, everything, absolutely everything for just one single breath. Survival is the essence because what survival means is hold on to dear life. And dear life is sacred. So it's about survival. And I do understand survival. I was blessed with a very extreme survival experience. I'm saying I was blessed because, as opposed to your description of challenges in life, which I agree, challenges can look daunting, depressing, or too hard, etc. My perspective is, if you can complain, it's probably not tough enough. If you have time to complain, the situation is not tough enough. When the situation is really tough, there's only one thing you can do, which is take the right action. There's no time to do anything else. And so that's real survival. Real survival is the best thing that can happen to an organism, because an organism under real survival immediately arrives at peak performance. Now, peak performance is good for extreme circumstances. I'm saying that because peak performance is not good for the day-to-day life. You don't want to be at peak performance. You want to be at optimal performance, not at peak performance. Peak performance consumes everything in you, just for that peak. Because at that peak, you need everything, every single resources. You need all of it, be it mental or emotional or physical or spiritual. You need it all. It feels great to be at peak performance. It's euphoric, literally euphoric to be at peak performance. Also, it's a superhero, real superhero. This is like people become superheroes. People physically, a mother can lift a car if a baby is trapped under the car. And amazing feats are possible at peak performance. And that peak performance is organic. It's not contrived. Like, you don't call it. It's there. You don't need to prepare for survival. You're ready. You're ready. Because we are an organism. And I purposely say organism and not human, because it's true for a bird and a cockroach or a mosquito. They'll have the intelligence to hold on to their life. I think it's not even the organism, it's life within the organism that wants to preserve itself. It's that strong. As I say, it's almost you don't have a choice here, and almost it's not up to your character. In real survival, life kicks in, all your faculties awaken, you're at peak performance, and you deal with the situation, And of course, we know the classic ways of dealing with the circumstances, which are fight, flight, and sometimes it's fright or freeze. And we can discuss that, as I had no choice but becoming an expert in survival. What I mean by that, one thing is to survive, but because my story is so dramatic and it was so widely spread, people associate me with survival. So I also had to learn about survival and to explain what survival means, etc. So I can say that I'm an expert on survival, but a lot of my understanding is counterintuitive. I believe that the challenges of life, they create an experience of survival. They create that survival. The experience is real, but the situation is not real. So there's discrepancy between what the organism feels and to the environment. There is no danger in the environment, but the organism got a cue, and the mechanism of survival was activated. So now there is a survival situation. I mean, the organism experiences survival, which is, as I say, the best thing that can happen to an organism is to be at peak performance. However, there's nobody to fight and there's nobody to flight from, because the challenges in life are not survival, but we do believe that they are. So they become real. But because of the discrepancy, um, actually it achieves the opposite result. So the result of real survival is to save life. The results of imaginary survival actually destroys life. Actually, nothing makes us weaker, disintegrated, diseased, and even premature death. Nothing, it's the precursor to all disease. We call it regularly stress, but I don't call it stress. For me, stress is imaginary survival. What is stress? It's an activation of the stress mechanism, which is supposed to kick in survival without any good reason. And I want to, with your permission, I want to explain that because I think it's really important to understand how it happens. What's the mechanism? So let's take a look at it. In real survival circumstances, how do we know that we are in real survival? As I say, it's not up to us. The organism will actually identify the situation itself. And the answer is quite simple, but our senses will tell us. Okay. So let's put an example. Okay. Let's say I'm trekking in Montana. I'm just inventing it. And there's a bear coming out of the woods. Okay. So the moment a bear comes out of the wood, I'm in a survival circumstances right now. The bear is dangerous. The bear is maybe scared, and that's why the bear will attack, or the bear is hungry, or whatever it is. But now I'm under a bear attack. How do I know? Well, I see it with my eyes. I see the bear. I hear the growling of the bear. If it's close enough, I can smell the bear. And if he stumps, I can actually feel the earth shaking. So, apart from taste, 4 out of my 5 senses were activated. Actually, if you are sensitive enough, as most animals are, there is a sixth sense that animals have, and it's called the presence sense, which basically it means that you are so present in the circumstances that even before your senses saw the bear or heard the bear or smelled the bear, you can feel the bear. You can feel it. There's something, the stillness of the forest, maybe the birds that saw the bear, and something, so there's such a presence that sense actually is very important. It's like in the air, like, so you can sense the danger. So we understood that in that example, the survival situation is noticed by our senses. And the senses see, I can feel it, I can see it, I can smell it, I can hear it, I can sense it. I'm in danger. Okay. And then survival is activated, and now it's appropriate. There is a bear, and I'm in survival. My body gets what does it mean? The parasympathetic system is activated. I get a lot of hormones, of all kind of like hormones that so give me energy, give me clarity, give me courage. My body injects me with like the full potential because I need it. I need to run. If I run the fastest I ever ran, if I need to confront the bear, I need to pick up a piece of wood or a rock. I have to be really accurate, and I have to reserve my calm while doing it, not to be in hysteria, not to let fear consume me. So a lot of going on in terms of supporting me at that. So I'm flooded with hormones, and these hormones give me the power that I need to deal with the bear. Now, let's look at imaginary survival, which is very common and much more dangerous than real survival. What kills us is actually imaginary survival, not real survival. What happens in imaginary survival is the senses atrophied, they're not involved. The sixth sense of the human being is not presence, it's actually the opposite. So when imaginary survival is activated, there is no bear. I'm not present, I cannot sense the bear. I cannot smell, I cannot see, I cannot hear, I cannot feel. There is no bear. So my senses are not involved in spotting the danger. What is involved is only one sense, which is the human sixth sense, which is called the mind. So my sixth sense, the mind, as a human being, thinks, yeah, and the thought creates image. And now it's all in my head, and the body, because also we have to know that the survival mechanism is very primitive. It's really old. It's not in the neocortex. It's part of the vagal nerve system. It's actually in the gut mostly. Okay. And so this sense, this faculty doesn't know. So if the brain tells survival, the bear screams bear, even though the eye didn't see the bear and the nose didn't smell the bear. It's enough that the mind said bear, and the bear can be the bank account, or the girlfriend, or the boss, or there's so many things that stress us in life that gives the cue. The cue is received in a way, and that's also important to note, in a way, it's a flood of cues. It's not a cue, it's a flood of cues. And this, we are flooded by cues. There's nothing we can do to fend the cues, because we hold a queuing machine that send us a lot of cues all the time. So never before we had something that will give us so many cues. So we get notifications and impressions beyond any human that was ever alive. This is the peak of like impression floods. A lot of the impressions are cues because, for example, news, by definition, the definition of news is bad news. That's the definition of news. News is bad news. That's the definition. And bad news is on purpose because that primitive reaction creates a certain addiction. So we can say we are almost, or not almost, we are addicted to that cue, okay, that activates. But the activation, because of the discrepancy, instead of giving us the power, it poisons us. And this poison actually gives the base for disease and disintegration and early deaths. So that's the difference between survival that is real and survival that is imaginary. Real is based on senses, imaginary is based on the mind, but the body experiences survival in both cases. In one case, it's appropriate. In the other case, it's completely not in sync with reality. Now, this doesn't disappear by understanding. It's not like, as I say, we cannot fend it. So we need to fight back. In order to manage imaginary survival, we have to fight back. Fighting back means we have to be aware that this is not survival. It's not real. It is survival, but it's not real. And we have to remedy it. Most people don't know how to remedy it because they think that we'll remedy it with the mind. For example, I will say, I listened to this podcast and I heard Yossi speaks about that. Now I understand. So when a bear, imaginary bear, is showing up, I will say there's no bear. And don't worry, actually just imaginary. And I'll give my mind all the explanation, all the rationale that we spoke about, and the mind will understand. It doesn't work like that. You cannot cure the problem with the problem. Okay? You cannot say, okay, I'll think about something else, or let's do this exercise. What's the worst circumstances, and let's mitigate it. It doesn't work. Don't try to fight the mind with the mind. So my way of dealing with it is actually very, very simple, but very, very effective. And this really can change life, prolong life, prevent disease, and it's very simple. There's two things that I do, and they completely change the circumstances. And immediately, I do the opposite. I go back to the senses. So when I'm stressed, instead of thinking about it and trying to say don't stress and it's not real and what can happen and all that, doesn't help. What I do, I just tell my mind, do whatever you want. I don't really care. Keep keep doing what you want. That's the best way to deal with it. Just and take the sting out of it the moment you say, I don't care. You keep imagining and think what you think, and then you connect. If you're near a window or outside, it's better. But just I do a minute and I move from sense to sense and I fully dwell in the sense. So, for example, when I activate my eyes, I will activate my eyes by looking, scanning. I wouldn't just look. I will do that movement. Now, because that mechanism is very primitive, the mechanism understands. The mechanism understands that the mind doesn't have to be involved. That movement is obviously a movement of scanning the horizons, and the eyes are giving information. Now the mind now can tell whatever stories. The eyes now broadcast. I don't see no danger. Now I activate my ears. I activate my nose. My feet on the ground, and I'm trying to awaken my presence. And on top of it, I do something that is like the switch, and that's like a gift, like to know that it's very simple. Everything that I say is very simple, but extremely effective. The switch is the breath. The breath can turn off the imaginary survival because in a survival situation, as I said, it's an imaginary survival, but in the organism, it's real. Yeah. So the body now, it's so stressed, the organism, I give him the opposite cue, and the opposite cue is slow exhale. Okay? A very slow exhale. So when I exhale so slow, you cannot be, in fight or flight and have the time to just take a deep breath and then really slow, release the air. Basically, the body relaxes and almost you get an euphoric sensation of calm. Now, I've changed circumstances in very extreme circumstances where, my mind was losing it. Okay. And there was so much fear. I'm tempted to tell you a story that, it's a bit off, but I will tell it anyway. So you have an example. Now, it was like about, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. Okay, I was in LA. It was a fashion design. I was a guest of a friend that was like sought after as a fashion designer, a fashion photographer. Sorry. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But what happened is I was in his house, and he said he gave me a jar with some grass and said, "Why don't you roll us a joint? I'm just jumping for a minute, and I'll be back, and we'll just have a minute." I said, "Okay." So I just rolled the joint, and it was like a piece of cardboard for a filter and some tobacco. I think you call it a spliff in the States or something. And so I just rolled the spliff, okay? But what happened? He didn't come. He didn't come back. So I just went to sleep. I had an early flight, and I just flew to Dallas, where I had like a business engagement. And then I flew from Dallas to New York, and I just had my little bag with me. Flying from Dallas to New York, some reason I was chosen, like to be actually screened, and somebody went through my bag. There was a little, like inside my bag, there was a little bag with my toothbrush and stuff. Suddenly, he pulls the joint out of my bag. Now he's holding the joint. He's looking at me. Now this is 20 years ago. Yeah, in Dallas.
Different time.
Yeah, and it's not legal, and it's Dallas. And he looks at me and he tells me, "Don't move, just sit here." And I see him going, and he's talking to the officer of the NSA, like he's talking to the officer. At that moment, my mind just loses it because I'm a professional keynote speaker. I have agents. If I'm now arrested and the fingerprints and maybe like I'm deported, my career is gone, my reputation, my good name, and everything goes down. Now I depend on it. So now also my income and my family. And suddenly my mind created a huge disaster. Now a pack of bears attacking me, and I see everything. I can imagine all the danger, everything and it's logical. Okay, it's logical. Okay. But I remember that I know what to do. So I go to the body. Okay. And I go to the body and I start screening my body. And in a strange way, I'm totally relaxed and I don't pay even attention. So now I'm totally relaxed and I do my breath exercise. And I'm so relaxed. My mind is still running, but my body has calmed down completely. And now the officer is coming. Now the officer is coming. Now he's holding the joint. And he's calling me. He said, "Come over." I'm coming over, open chest, I'm smiling. And he's telling me, "Is that yours?" I say, "It's mine." He's saying, "What is it?" He's holding, it's absolute, it cannot be something else. It's obvious what it is. So I look at him and I say, "Well, it's a cigarette." He's saying, "What kind of a cigarette?" I look at him. I say, "American Spirit." He's saying, "Sir, have a nice flight." Puts the joint back in, closes my bag, giving me my bag. And now I'm flying to New York. Now, I'm telling you that without me manipulating the situation and changing the imaginary survival to there's no survival, there's circumstances, but I'm not about to die. My life is not in danger. Okay? There's the stories, there's the challenge, but my life is not in danger. If I would come to him with all that fear, with all the tension, everything that I saw would happen. So what I'm saying, the power to be there present at the moment and identifying imaginary survival and intervening as other aspects. The other aspects are exactly these aspects. We are a broadcast machine. Okay? So when I'm stressed, beside all the ill doing that to my own body and psyche, the disintegration of faculties due to the stress. Apart from that, I am broadcasting now. I'm broadcasting stress. That stress that I'm broadcasting, first of all, is dangerous for the environment. Yeah. Let's say if you're very stressed and you come into a room, you're stressing everybody else because you are projecting it. Okay. So now I become contamination to the environment, first of all. Another aspect is that it goes beyond the environment into the universe. And it tells the universe fear or yeah. So basically I'm now attracting what I don't want. I'm projecting, and that projection attracts exactly what I'm afraid of. So you see all the levels of how bad it is. And so, sorry, it's kind of a long answer.
That was a great side story, and I think that illustrated what you were saying perfectly well. And to bring it back to what I was asking, because how I said, I was talking in terms of survival and metaphorical terms, and you added on to that by understanding, oh, there's real survival and then there's imaginary survival. And I have felt on a deep level being in a state of imaginary survival. And that wasn't me knowingly putting myself into that state. Like I wasn't believing that, but I felt it on a physiological level and a neurological level. And that resonates on a deep, deep level. And what I love is because, like we were talking about before we got on the podcast, my initial thoughts for this conversation were to do a deep dive into your survival story of being in the jungle and how you got through this. And what I love about the conversation so far is yes, it's an incredible story that you have, but the wisdom that you were able to garner from that entire experience is worth so much more. And it is so much more incredible to listen to and can be beneficial for people. Like that's where the true value comes into play. And I know how we were talking about earlier, like the more you repeat a story, the more it just gets diluted and it loses its strength. Why do you think the repeating of story does that, where it loses its spark?
It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. And but what I feel when people want just the story from me, and then the interview goes into, and then what happened, and then what happened, and I find myself just telling an old story.
Yeah.
Um, but so it's a bit for me boring and repetitious and regurgitate, ruminescence or regurgitating, and that's not a good feeling. And also I feel like, okay, you don't really care about me, all you want is my big story, like. And I kind of like sometimes feel um, I mean, but a bit that, like I had some big podcasters that I said no. They said no, we don't care, we just want the stories. And okay, well, I'm not interested. um, Nonetheless, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, I'm happy to tell the story, but when I tell the story, I don't actually tell exactly what happened. I don't remember anymore what happened. I tell you why. I went through this adventure 3 weeks in the Amazon, and basically 2 months, because a month led to it, where we were 4 people in the Amazon, and then 3 weeks on my own, and then a week after my survival. So the story of 2 months in the Amazon. Yeah. Now I went through this story, and then I wrote a book, which is like a document, like, because the book was written 6 months later, and I was too young to be an author. It was a journal. I just wrote what happened to me. After that, the book was translated in many languages. There were many interviews and many articles, and then there were like different movies, documentaries. There were two, and then it became different forms. The story, and also like a Hollywood movie. Now, being involved in all that, I don't remember anymore what's part of the movie and what's part of the. I just don't remember, and it doesn't really matter anymore. Sometimes in the movies they portrayed it much better. It makes the story better. What does it matter that it actually happened differently? Who really cares? You know, the authenticity is in the voice, in the substance, in the connection, in the value, and not necessarily if it exactly happens that he told me this, and and I have to repeat exactly what happened. You know, I think that in general, life is a story. So you need to be a good storyteller in life because it's all about the story. Stories are important. Reality is something that is very hard to pin down. Like things happen, but I don't think any of us can have the real intelligence to actually understand why and how things happen because so many circumstances aligned together to create a minute or an encounter, and there's so many layers, and everything happens while moving because reality is a moving thing. Like there is no now. The now is a movement, doesn't stop. So for you to grasp what's happened now, it's impossible. So happens what happens, you experience it, but immediately afterward, you tell a story about it. It's not really what happened. It's the way you grasp it. And with time, naturally, we improve the stories because like the way we narrate it, the way we remember it. Oh, we want to manipulate it this way or another. So I say it doesn't have to be the truth because who can say that the real story was actually the real story? And like those classic stories such as Kurosawa, Rashomon, that tells the same story 5 times, five different happens. Or it's the fable of the five blind monks and the elephant. The story repeats itself. It's very ancient. That there is no truth. It's just our perception. So it's a story. Yeah. So as long as I'm allowed to tell the story freely, I don't dilute it because I give it the now. I'm telling what is happening now to the man that I am today, looking back and using those circumstances to bring who I am today. you know. So my insights in the middle of the jungle, I tell them, but they're not. They're my insight today. I just give it to the boy because the story is important. The story is important. If I just give the insight without the story, people don't listen. People listen to stories. They don't listen to learning. They do, but their attention span is very short to teaching and very long when stories are told. So I love to tell stories, and I don't mind telling parts of my big story if it supports and give value to your audience, Tim, by all means.
Incredibly well put. And yeah, I forget what the exact stat is, but the retention rate of when you're talking from a place of research versus story based, it's a massive gap between being able to retain a lot more information when it's coming from a vantage point where it's a story. I had the thought as well when we were going back and forth. I was like, yeah, so this happened back in 1981. And if we have a conversation about what exactly happened here, it wouldn't be like I was talking to you. It would be like the two of us were having a conversation about another person or like a movie character.
Yeah,
And it has become a movie character.
that's right.
And I want to talk about the movie process as well because you said that when it comes into a story and turning it into a movie, it's not necessarily a sharing of the story, but it's the opposite of that. It's almost like you're letting go of your story. What did that entire experience feel like where you weren't in control?
I couldn't release the story as an property and give that property to a producer and say, "Here, I'm giving you the rights." I didn't. I refused to give the rights to the book exploitation as a movie. I refused. So I agreed to be a producer. So whoever wants to make that story to turn it into a movie will have to deal with me as well, not just do what they want. And I felt that as a responsibility, especially to the other characters. Because sometimes they can do, and I've seen them doing it in treatments and screenplays that were written about my story and presented to me, um, some terrible atrocities, to character, murder of characters. And those characters are important to me because two of them never came back. And one of them saved my life, and I have responsibility to be the guardian of these characters. So that was my main concern. And so the movie, it took it 26 years to become a movie, and the story is great. And I could have done it in the first 3 years. I had two opportunities in the first 3 years. Sorry, when I first arrived in Hollywood. I arrived in Hollywood, like, I believe it was 89. And after 3 years, I left Hollywood and I said, I'm not coming back. Because what I felt, I came with the desire to make the movie. And on the other hand, I wanted to maintain the integrity of the characters. But the desire to make the movie was so big that in the end, I felt I was very close to start prostituting myself. I was about to do everything that I feared. I was about to do it myself just because you want the deal and you're there. And I got scared of myself and I left Hollywood. I just left after 3 years and had no intention to come back. But in these 3 years, I met a girl that became a very, like, successful independent producer. And she came to me years later and said, it's time, I'm ready, I want to take your story. I said, I'm not giving it to you, but I'm not selling it to you. You don't have to pay me anything, but let's form a company, a partnership, and I'm giving it for free to the partnership. But I am a producer and I'll have to be involved in it. And that's what happened. And this movie was made almost 3 times. There was 3 times the movie was cast. The first cast was in those 3 years. I was then in Hollywood, and Emilio Estevez. I don't know if you remember Emilio,
Yep.
the great guy. He was supposed to be the lead. And we had a great adventure in the Amazon. For inspiration, I took him and the producer and the screenplay writer and the still photographer, and we all went to the Amazon and had a fantastic adventure. And everything went right until I saw the screenplay, and then I refused to extend the option, and I was thrown out of the office of this producer who said, "You'll never do business in this town," and like, it was drama, and I left. The second time was already with Dana Lustig, that girl, that producer, and it was with Peter, uh, Josh Hutcherson. Sorry, not Peter, Josh Hutcherson. He
Hmm.
was Peter in that movie, The Hunger Game. Yeah.
Yep.
Is a great actor. He was already studying Hebrew, and it was like a great cast. And we had everything. We started shooting the movie actually in La Paz, Bolivia, shooting, cameras rolling. And then one of the producers, he got cancer, and he went through some very deep emotional whatever, and he quit the movie after we already began, and he pulled a few millions out of the budget, and the whole thing collapsed. So this is the second time. And the third time was the movies that was made. It took 26 years for me to bring it. So people see the movie and think, "Wow, what a story!" And then they made a movie. It's not like that. Every dream requires a huge sacrifice. I would say the size of the dream begets the size of the resistance to the dream.
Mm.
So if you want to make a Hollywood movie, well, good luck. Like good luck. You have the persistence and the tenacity, the grit. Um, but values are important, and we made a movie based on my book. I was on the set, and I had a big fight, mainly with the screenplay writer. I called him my enemy in that period, but he was my enemy out of his own integrity. He wanted this artistic expression. you know. And I remember I was told, Yossi, this is not a documentary. It's a feature film. In a feature film, it's a collaboration and it's the talent of many people. So I had to let go. But the framework was we're telling the true story, and within it, people have the creative freedom to express themselves, which is fair enough. I feel very comfortable with the movie, and the movie was titled Jungle, and the lead is Daniel Radcliffe, and he did an amazing job. I was on the set. It was a huge honor to see more than 300 people working, really working hard. It's incredible hard work to make a movie, and it was good for them to see me on the set. So because it's a real story, and here I was there. It's felt in the movie itself. Like they were very motivated, and also Daniel was really is like a method actor. He really studied me and had long conversations, and he's a great guy. And I'm really honored because it's a legacy to have a movie, and movies now are eternal as opposed to before as film. Now they're digital and they live forever. So I'm very happy and proud of it. And yet, it takes 2 months, and to cut them into 2 hours, it's a big art. Like to take 2 months and make them fit in 2 hours, and you have to make obviously sacrifices. But I'm happy with the result.
Tying things back into your real life and also that side story that you told earlier about you being in the airport and being able to calm yourself down pretty quickly, either on a unconscious and physiological level or also having the conscious thought, are you ever just able, like, I guess in a difficult time, just like think to yourself, if I can survive 3 weeks in the jungle, there isn't anything I can't do?
Somehow I never associated with that kind of like it's not something that crosses my mind to think that way. It
Hmm.
doesn't. I never think that way. So it's not an example that I've experienced ever. And these 3 weeks of survival left me in a strange way without any trauma. I can tell you honestly, Tim, not even one nightmare ever. Not a session with any therapist ever. Um, no fear. And I am so close with nature. I don't know anybody that is closer beside tribal people. I actually live outside of the house every single night. I don't sleep in my house. I sleep outside in a tent, and I'm doing it for decades. And not because of what happened to me in the Amazon, just because of the romance of it, the sense of the adventure, the feeling, the grace. Like my tents are beautiful, beautiful tent. It's like sultanesque. It's not like camping, and it's not glamping. It's actually sultanesque. There's lush beds and carpets and sofas, but in the end of the day, it's a frame and a piece of fabric. That's all it is, you know. So I am very, very close to nature in that sense. But the way I think about this experience, that can I relate to the notions that you raised, is different. It's in appreciation, you know. It's in appreciation, and that helps me. Like uh, let's say if I have issues, but I still have a roof above my head and there's food on the table and I'm healthy, then I cannot really find myself being depressed or stressed. Um, and also, stress doesn't touch me. I think it's not like a process, but I think my life was so extreme that extreme is normal for me. You know what I mean? The extreme, it's like I worked in drug addiction for many years. I was helping um, opiate addicts. And so I learned a lot about addiction. And there's something that is called tolerance. Like you develop tolerance. I developed tolerance to extreme. I have tolerance. It doesn't affect me that much anymore. I think what stayed with me is the perspective. But I'm not thinking like that. If I survive that, but I definitely am feeling grateful beyond the normal. Like to open the fridge and take food outside is not mundane. It's sacred. And to be in a bed with a blanket, it's sacred. I think most people take it as they can be very stressed while the life is so good to them. The fridge is full of food. They have a warm blanket under a roof, many times with somebody to give them warmth, and they still can be miserable, which is, it's all about perspective. And I think that's a flaw in us, that we are so unpresent, and we believe we're so remote from our being as a fully engaged organism, and we just make basically a mind sitting on a body. And so I definitely recommend to, since you cannot stop the mind, then you have to hack it, and that's what I've become in my work with people. I'm more of a hacker than a consultant, like so instead of trying, as I say, to pacify the mind with the mind, I bypass it. I find ways to bypass it, and I find it much more effective.
I really like that. So that first time that you returned to the Amazon jungle, to the very place that you had your entire survival experience, was that just pure pride and excitement of making that return?
When I returned to the Amazon, I I wanted to see the people that were involved in my rescue. Those are people that I owe them my life. And there was Kevin, the main guy beyond my survival rescue, without any doubt the guy that saved my life, literally. An American hero. For me, he was always the real hero of the story. I was the underdog, so my story is maybe more interesting. But as a character, he was a much more hero character than me. Um, but Kevin wasn't in the Amazon. Kevin actually moved to Israel about a year after this experience and lived all his life in the vicinity. So I had opportunity to see Kevin. When I went to the Amazon, I went to see Tico, the man that brought Kevin in the canoe, and the Chupiamona, the indigenous people that found Kevin in the river and then came back with Kevin and Tico to help Tico negotiate the river. And I went up, and I mean, first I came to the jungle town of Ur in Abake, and from there I met Tico, the man with the dugout canoe, and I asked him to take me up the Tuichi River. And we went up the river 8 hours, and then we climbed on the mountain, and there's that village of Dochupiamona. And it was just a visit, just a courtesy visit, where I wanted actually to thank them and in a way close the circle, something like that. I haven't been there in 10 years. This was 10 years after my ordeal. So I went up to the village, and there was a radio, so they got notice that I'm coming, and they were waiting for me. They're very remote, the Chupiamona. And the kids came from the school, and they were like dancing and reciting songs for me, and there's food and drink, and the dignitary gave speeches. It was all kind of funny, almost formal, in the middle of the jungle. This really indigenous tribe, but they had their way of ceremony. And then I gave a speech. My Spanish was very rusted after 10 years of uh, not being in the continent, but I still could say, thank you for saving my life, and I appreciate it. And then the three leaders of these communities, they came to me and said that they want to have a reunion with me, to talk with me. And we sat together, and they told me that basically they really appreciate that I came to thank them for saving my life, but they wanted me to know that they're dying. The entire community is dying. They were very dramatic about it. I got scared. I thought some disease or something, and said, no, it's just that we're dying because our youth, they don't continue our ways. They don't want to live here in the middle of the jungle. There's no grace in it anymore. We're just basically poor. It's poverty. Once was the notion of the noble savage, but the noble savage was naked. He was noble. The moment the savage was dressed, because the missioner came and said, no, it's actually, God doesn't like you being naked. It's immoral. What it meant, and now the savage became poor because he had no money for nice dress. So he basically got tatters. And now he stopped being a noble savage and he became, like cultured. And that's what happened to them. They were cultured and they were just poor. And they said that the youths are leaving the village, and due to that, and the community is growing small, and they're worried that they're gonna basically disappear as a tribe. The Uchupiamona. There's only 850 people. That's the entire tribe. And I understood, and I said, well, the youth are leaving, and they're going to the jungle towns on the big river, and they take any job, scraping floors or washing dishes, or whatever it takes, just to make a few pesos, and they not come back. They don't come back to the village. And I said, so how can I help? And they said, look, we have a dream and we need help. I said, okay, what's your dream? And they said that their dream is to build a lodge for tourists. Because there's a very beautiful lake a couple of hours down from the village. It's like pristine lake, beautiful. And there's many animals. And they want to put a lodge there. And in their vision, this lodge will attract thousands of tourists from all over the world. In their imagination, people will come and they'll appreciate the beauty. And their youth is going to build that lodge, and their youth is going to run the lodge and be the guides and the boat motormen and the maids and the cooks. And they'll make money. The youth would not have to leave the village, but actually they will work in that lodge. And more than that, they'll take pride in their culture. And as they explain about nature and about they're real Amazonians. They've been there for who knows. So I heard them, and they said, would you help us? And I had no choice but to say yes. In that circumstances, what could you do? Say, no, I'm too busy, or I'm not really willing. The circumstances doesn't give you any option by saying, of course I will, I'll do everything to help you. But in my head, I said, these guys have no clue what they're talking about. Because how are they going to put a lodge here? There's no way to get here even. I just came to visit them. The flights are military flights only once a week. And it's on a grass landing strip. So if it rains, the flight is cancelled. And it rains because it's the rainforest. So, and then if there is no flight, the only other way to get there is by the road. And the name of the road is the Death Road, because no road on planet Earth has claimed so much life as the Death Road. It's the most dangerous road on the planet. and that's just to get to the jungle. And then you have to take a boat for 6 hours upriver, and then you have to walk an hour through the. And it's very complex. It's very complex to move tourists. And then who's going to pay for it? To build a lodge and like a facility. But I couldn't tell them. I couldn't tell them that it's nonsense. And I thought it's nonsense, but I couldn't say it. But so I said I will help you. And there's something about that, because it haunted me. I went back to LA and I couldn't sleep well because I saw their faces, I saw the kids that came to meet me and the ceremonies and the dances. Nobody comes there. They completely forgotten deep in that forest and have no opportunity. And I promised them that I'll help them. I did promise them, but and I did talk to a few people in LA, and everybody told me, "You're crazy. What do you want? Indians in the middle of the jungle. What?" So I couldn't talk to anybody that will sympathize with me, and like they just helped me with that notion that, I, you know. But I still, I wouldn't sleep well at night. I said I had no nightmares, but their faces, they haunted me. I said I promised them to come back. I have to do something. So what I did, I with my girlfriend, we talked to people and we decided we'll do a party and we'll raise money at the party. And people, like somebody gave us a very fancy nightclub, closed it for the night just for us, and DJs, and we spread the word, and lots of people came, and they gave money, and I think I made like something like $8,000-9,000 in one night. And I took the money and I flew to the Amazon again, and I went up to the village. I put the money on the table. This was like really a scene from the movies, like they never saw that much money ever in their life. And I said, I came to help you as I promised. Let's start the project. And I stayed with them there for 3 years. For 3 entire years, I lived in the Amazon with them. And we built that. And it's one of the most award winning resorts in the entire Amazon Basin. We opened it in 95. It's still active 30 years later. Thousands of people from all over the world have been there, including celebrities and kings and superstars. And there's a long list of celebrities that came to visit. 140 other communities were inspired to start doing things for themselves. I raised money in Washington, D.C. I brought conservation organization to, suddenly we turned this into a center and we transformed the entire region from extraction of resources such as gold and logging and hunting. It's all about tourism now. And it's all about guided tours and different facilities and survival experience. So this village not only saved itself, it saved the entire region. In the process, they claimed the land as their ancestral lands. In the process, the entire Madidi was suddenly turned into officially a national park, and they became the guardians of the park. Like huge change, and it's all because they had no clue what they was talking about. If they knew, they would have never done it. They would have never. It was impossible. The thing is, they didn't know. They didn't know it's impossible. 6 flights a day,
Wow.
bitumen landing strip, widened. The death road was fixed. They were actually um, so sometimes, the naive can do what the professional will never even attempt doing. And I think for me, that story is bigger than the story of my survival for 3 weeks. This was 3 years in the Amazon. And funny, it was on the same river, the same Tuichi River, with the same people that were involved. I just came back from there last month. I am officially the ambassador of the Uchupiamona people to the world now,
Wow.
officially, and I take it with because I was there again after 7 years that I didn't visit, and again the same experience. I saw the new generation and the kids, and they're doing so much better, but still it's not enough. Chalalan, that's the name of the lodge, Chalalan Eco Lodge, needs some more funds because Chalalan, instead of taking care of itself, Chalalan belongs to the people. So the money from Chalalan goes to the village, and Chalalan is not well maintained enough. So they need more money, and so I took it upon myself once again to do the same thing, not to help them, but to be part of them and help ourselves, which is a totally different attitude. Not wait for somebody to come and help you, but actually take initiative. That idea was there. So now we came up with a um, different structure that is like a foundation. That I'm now opening a foundation, and the foundation, they will have to help in promoting that foundation by creating content, and all of them have phones now. They're on Facebook, they're on WhatsApp in the middle of the Amazon. They have receptions, they're satellite reception, and they're all connected, which is amazing. So that story is still alive, Tim. It's still alive. I'm still part of that community. I'm going back, and now I took upon myself to be more involved.
You're 100% right that that story is more empowering and impactful, it seems like, because to heal your past from what you experienced surviving there, you're like, all right, I want to build the future here. You said, wherever fear rises in my life, that's where I go. I don't turn my back to fear, I go towards my fear. Is there a fear you currently have that you're embracing?
Yeah, look, I just want to. I'm saying that's something very dangerous to say, and I'm trying to be careful with what I say because my belief is what you say, and will come and search for you. It will come and meet you. So if I say I walk towards my fear, fear will say, "Really? Let's see," and fear will
Mm,
come, and fear can be scary. But I just want to be clear that I'm talking about those paralyzing fear that are not danger. I'm not talking about danger from, not about risking your life walking towards something scary. Of course, I mean to the fear of life, the fear of doing something and hesitating, or the fear of dealing, confronting, and being authentic, allowing myself to shine. That fear of, like, being so full of ego that I'm shy. You know what I mean? Because to belittle yourself is just ego. You know? If you have no ego, you have no reason to be humble. Like, because you're in the service, why be humble about it? So I meet those fears, and the best way to deal with them is to walk towards them. And it takes practice. And it takes courage, even though we're not talking about, as I say, and life endangering fear. But many times we're just afraid from a confrontation, or for saying what we really believe, showing our authenticity. We're afraid of our own dreams. We're afraid to
mm,
fail, and we're more afraid to succeed than to fail. And we're afraid from relationship because we are afraid that they see us for who we are, and we we don't want them because we doubt ourselves. So we fear showing, our real color, our authenticity, and all those fears are life killing and life paralyzing, and and one needs to train. like towards that. I grew on that book, Dune. I think I read it like 50 times, like, and there's like a certain um, protocol
Hmm.
of how to deal with fear. You remember, there's like a protocol, something that Paul recites, is learning from Jessica, his mother, to the not Gesherit. It's their secret. It's something that I really like. It's like, it's not real, just go through fear and you'll come the other side and the fear will disappear, something like that. So I believe that fear in that sense is good, because it shows you the way. Because when fear arises, now you know where you're going towards it. At least you have a guide to show you where you need to go. And then I learned that actually, that fear and courage are not the opposite, but actually are the same. Because with no fear, there's no courage. Like, the fear is the precursor for courage. If you're afraid, then you can actually harness your courage. If you're not afraid, then there's no courage involved. So actually, it's okay to be afraid. And courage is a huge virtue, and it's something that we need to cultivate. Because uh, many of us are, and myself. I'm not saying that I'm a master, but at least having been talking about that inspires me as well to remember that, because we meet those many little fears along the day, and I believe that it's our duty, to actually conquer our fears, because we have a mythical journey in life, and that's something that I came to realize. And it's the basis of every story that was ever told. It's called the hero's journey. you know. And what's so powerful about the hero's journey is that the hero is me.
We talked about imaginary survival at the very start of our conversation. What do you think the first step is for somebody who might be in that imaginary survival, how they can get out of it?
As I say, the best is to hack the situation and not think it. You know, it's much easier to hack than to use the thought process. Yeah. So, um, like, there's many hacks today. It's a popular word, like biohackers and etc. And I like hacking. It suggests finding a short way, a cut, being smarter in how to manage it, out of the box. I love technology, so I love hacking in technology. So I think the hacker approach, that's what I would give it as a title, like, to deal with it through the hacker approach. Um, there's certain ways, you see, like, one way to hack the mind is to understand that you cannot control the thinking process. You can't. So by understanding that, you cannot say I'm thinking, because if you're thinking, you can stop thinking. But since you're not able to stop thinking, that's probably not you that is thinking. You have no control over that. So that's the beginning of it. Not associating. By not associating, you take power from that thought. It's not me thinking. No, that is just a thought. You cannot stop it anyway. And so take the power from it. Take the power from the thought. There's other ways. Like, if something, let's say, audio is powerful, and you engage with it, you cannot think and be engaged. Like, and that's the other thing that you have to understand about hacking the brain, is that it has only one channel, and that's a vulnerability of the mind. There's only
Mm.
one channel. So if you can occupy the channel, basically you turned it off. So that's another good thing. Like Descartes, he has the famous expression, I think, therefore I am. I say I do not think, therefore I am. It's actually the opposite is true. When I don't think, I can finally meet me. The one that is thinking is not me. Um,
I love
so
that.
I would say that's the beginning. Just have an approach. Be practical about it. Be practical, not too much psychology. Not trying to understand and undo. Better ignore than try and understand. It's hopeless and futile, in my opinion, to try and resolve all these issues. And as I say, it's all stories. It's all stories. Most of our traumas, they never even happened. Like most of our story, my father didn't love me, my mother did this. It's stories. Like I had my stories like that myself. And once I spoke with my father, he didn't even know what I was talking about. But I, at certain age, made some story, and that allowed that story to hinder my life. So, in general, a past is malleable, because you have to use the past for your own advantage. So, um, feel free to edit your past. Um, and future is also malleable, but in a very different way, because future you can manifest. Um, and thinking is when you actually use that faculty, and then you basically a master, you're a creator. That's what we are. Being a creator is our ability actually to imagine. So everything that I said about imaginary survival, the positive aspect of it, that we can imagine anything. And I would say that focus on the brain power, on being brain. When we engage with the brain, it's the most beautiful thing. That's what gives us advantage as human beings. um, but when it comes to stress, don't deal with it, bypass it. Breath work, sense activation, those are very simple hacks and very powerful ones, very, very powerful. And as I said, it's much deeper because you're changing the environment, and you're changing even, like cosmic things, the way events happen around you are changed just because of that radiation. It's important to remember that in the end we are not words, we are vibrations. We are vibration. And if you deal with life as a vibration, there's a lot of hacks there. For example, if I meet stress of somebody else, so that stress is coming at me as a contamination. If I'm thinking, I'm not really present, because now I get triggered by, oh, you said that to me, and now I'm triggered, and now I'll give him back. And but actually, if you present, and you don't relate to the word, and don't allow your mind just be reactive, but you stay and you analyze the situation, you remind yourself everything is vibration. So now what I get is vibration. And the way to deal with vibration is, if it's a positive vibration, you want it, and you want to augment it. So you send the same vibration, and now you have more positive vibration. But if it's a negative vibration, you don't want it. So in order to prevent it from coming to you, you cannot send the same vibration to it, because it will augment it. You have to send the opposite vibration. And that's an incredible hack, because the person that is contaminating you with bad vibration, he is not aware. It's just words, and but it's not words, it's energy. You understand that energy, and you send the opposite energy, and it's canceling it mid-air. That person doesn't even know what happened, but you change the atmosphere because you're smart. So it's that type of work that I do, is to be present and not reactive. In general, I say, if anybody asks my advice, I say, stop playing ping pong, move to chess. You know, when you have a chess, you have time to analyze, and then you choose your move instead of like tack 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 tack. It's like,
Be more tactical.
yeah,
Yossi, it's been great talking with you.
thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think there's, like we were saying earlier, lot more value in the conversation that we had than just
Yeah,
unpacking how you
of course.
survived 3 weeks in the jungle.
Yeah, thank you for flowing with that.